But we have to talk about this. Ross Chastain, once again, not making any friends in the Cup Series garage here, spinning out Denny Hamlin, spinning out a couple of other drivers there, Martin Truex Jr.
Yep.
What do you guys think of Ross Chastain? Is he being too aggressive on track, or is he just racing like Ross Chastain races?
I mean, he's racing like Ross Chastain races, but that bullet's going to come back to bite him when playoffs come. And nobody's going to retaliate right now. They're going to wait till it matters. And he's just going to have to suffer the consequences. I'm sorry. Like he could have the Denny Hamlin thing this weekend. He knew he was washing up the track. He could have backed down that throttle a little bit, but he just stayed right in it. And I took his side to begin with because it looked like he got loose. But the more I looked at the replay, I was like, no, you pushed and you should have backed out. You stayed right in it knowing somebody was right there on your outside. So that's all Ross Chastain's fault.
Yeah, all he would have done was checked up just a little bit, and he'd have been fine. I mean, he'd have might have lost 2 positions, call it. But, I mean, he wouldn't have took Denny Hamlin out.
Yeah, the fact that he took Denny Hamlin out in that accident really kind of like, oh, man, here we go again, just like Gateway. Denny Hamlin he didn't show much anger. I mean, I wasn't listening to his scanner at the time, but I'm sure in his scanner during Radioactive when Fox brings it up, it would tell a different story. But post-race, he seemed very calm, cool, collective. Like, his time will come.
Yeah.
That's all you can do, really.
That's exactly what he's going to do. Denny's not going to get him back right now.
No, absolutely.
So there will be a retaliation, I'm telling you. And it's not going to be just from Denny Hamlin.
No.
So
no, it's not. But is this bad for us watching it? At least for me watching it, this is great watching Ross Chastain get up there, rub fenders with everybody, although it might be a bit too aggressive at times. Because, even Dale Earnhardt didn't do stuff like this. He didn't just wreck people for the sake of wrecking them. I'm sure if he asked Harry Labonte, he would tell a different story, or anybody else that raced against Dale Earnhardt. But he's racing so aggressively every lap. And that's what I'd like to see out of a driver there. And I get it. It's a 260 lap race.
Yeah.
He's racing like it's the final lap on every lap.
I'll say that I don't think it's bad for Chastain as it is bad for Trackhouse, because Trackhouse is about to get some tore up cars later in the season.
But Justin Marks will.
He said he'd back him up 100%.
Back him up 100%. And I get from his standpoint, and I listened to him talking about this with Dale Earnhardt Jr. on Dale Jr.'s podcast, that it's not fun going to the racetrack every week and fixing these cars every week, because then the price starts going up. The juice isn't worth the squeeze at that point for Justin Marks. But, I would look at Ross Chastain. It's like I see a throwback driver who's willing to give 120% every lap of every race. And then when the checkered flag falls, we'll deal with it later. I just like the fact that after the race, we saw NASCAR security around Ross Chastain just ready they were just anticipating anybody coming up there and confronting him about it. But that leads me to this question, Charlie and Austin, since you guys are drivers. As a driver, is it better for the sanctioning body to police the actions of a driver on track? Or is it more beneficial for drivers to police themselves away from the spotlight?
There's probably a process to it. I think as a driver, you got to realize when, yes, the light's shining on Chastain right now and he's eating it up. He's still young to the Cup Series. And I guess it could come back to bite him, but at the same time, the owners, being Justin Marks and Pitbull, I guess, should, play their hand in trying to police it up a little bit. Like, hey, look, we get you're giving it your all. We couldn't ask for any more. But just like this past weekend situation, he gave it his all, took out some cars. Give it your all, but when you're making more enemies than you got friends out there, there's a line that he may have crossed.
You're just setting yourself up for something bad later on down the road.
But if you're a team owner I mean, in my opinion, there shouldn't be a but after you're running great. You're doing well. Ross Chastain finished second this weekend at Atlanta, having a very consistent year, 2 wins of the season so far. We're seeing him, even with a torn up race car, be competitive. And if I was a team owner, if I was Justin Marks or Pitbull, probably one day, Mr. Worldwide here, or whatever Pitbull says, that I would want to see if Charlie was my driver or Austin was my driver or anybody was my driver, them not care about what other people think. We'll defend you 110%. You give us second place finishes and wins and top 5 finishes every weekend, and we'll defend you to the ends of the earth. I will say this, though. If Ross Chastain was taking himself out during these altercations, then that's when I would step in as an owner and say, we need to talk. You're taking yourself out. You're preventing yourself from winning races.
Yeah.
Yes or no? Yes or no? I mean,
yeah, I see where you're coming from. At the same time, we don't know the conversations that are taking place at the shop and stuff like that. Like, sure, in the heat of it, you're going to defend your driver, just like with the Noah Gragson thing. A couple races ago. As far as the media goes, Kelly Earnhardt defended him.
Right. And Dale Jr. was disappointed in him, but he was still like, he's my driver still.
Yeah. So in the spotlight, I think you're going to defend him, but there's probably a little bit different conversations that take place.
Yeah, those conversations behind closed doors are a little bit different than what you see on social media for sure.
And I'm not saying they're not different behind closed doors whatsoever. All I'm saying, I mean, I would keep saying, hey man, keep staying the course. You're running consistently. You're not DNFing. You're not finishing 20th or below. You're in contention to win every weekend. Keep doing what you're doing. Whatever you're doing, Ross Chastain, you're doing it right. Something's working. And the fact that he's getting into drivers like Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin, for some reason, it's always Joe Gibbs drivers that I'm seeing right here. Right there, the juice is worth the squeeze. I don't care if you're Justin Marks, you want to push Joe Gibbs out of the way. You don't want them to gain any more momentum. You want to gain all the momentum, and you have all the momentum on your side with 2 great drivers. Now, I wish Daniel Suarez would have done better, but he finished 6th in the race. So Justin Marks and that Trackhouse team are bringing cars that could win every weekend to the racetrack, whereas Joe Gibbs Racing, without the fault, I dare say, of drivers like Ross Chastain, aren't bringing those kind of cars and competitive edge to the track every weekend. So to me, this is a changing of the guard. Just to me, just from an enthusiastic outside fan that has a podcast looking from the outside looking in, it looks like to me, it's a changing of the guard when it comes to Justin Marks and Trackhouse Racing.
Yeah, it's good for the team. It's good for the sport. Period. Absolutely. Right now, I mean, having those rivalries. So, and until it gets to a serious point and just completely out of hand, I don't think you'll see NASCAR say anything right now.
I don't think NASCAR should say anything. I think NASCAR should stay out of this. And back to your guys' point, that let the drivers police themselves. I mean, drivers will get together. I'm not a driver again. But Charlie, you're a driver. Austin, you've driven a time or two. Charlie, I'm sure you've gone up to another driver outside and like, hey man, let me talk to you. And you do that in your professional life too. You punish in private and praise in public.
Yeah.
And Denny Hamlin didn't say anything wrong. I'm not saying Denny Hamlin did anything wrong whatsoever. But what I'm saying is Denny Hamlin left the door open for us to speculate that he might call Chastain and say, what you're doing is wrong. Or Martin Truex Jr. might call Chastain and say, what you're doing is wrong. Any driver out there, okay, well, let me ask you this. Ask you guys this since we're on the topic. Who would be the driver out there who would go up to Chastain? Back in the day, it was Dale Earnhardt. Then it was Tony Stewart. I would say maybe Dale Jr. or Jeff Gordon go back in the day and say, hey, man, you need to watch what you're doing out there. You're doing great, but you're causing a lot of enemies. Who's the driver today in the Cup Series who would be holding that banner? Because to me, I mean, if I had to pick anyone, it would be Kevin Harvick or Kurt Busch.
So, yeah, I could see those two being. There's some of the
I'd say
older guys.
That or Kyle Busch.
Or Kyle Busch. Yeah, Kyle
Yeah.
Busch would be a good example as well. I mean, although he has a dog in the fight, because his teammates were affected this weekend by Ross Chastain, I just feel like with a field like this, a Kevin Harvick or a Kurt Busch, who's been racing since 2001, you can call Chastain and just like, hey, man, you're running great this season. However, you're not making a lot of friends out there. I mean, if I was Ross Chastain, I'd be like, I'm not out there to make friends. Charlie, you're not out there in the Cup Light Series making friends every Saturday night at South Alabama Speedway.
No, they don't know them guys like me.
No, I mean, but because you're competitive this season. If you were still breaking chains 5 laps into the race, they'd be like, we'll be friends with you.
Yeah.
You know, poor guy. But I mean, I feel like Ross Chastain's getting a bad rap. I feel like NASCAR or NASCAR Twitter, however you want to put it, just kind of gave him a bad rap this season or this race. And I feel like Ross Chastain deserves a pat on the back for what he's doing in the Cup Series. He came into this team after the merger with Chip Ganassi Racing and Trackhouse and that acquisition there from for Trackhouse Racing. And has really shown their muscle and really shown what they can bring to the track. I feel like they're doing great. And I say stay the course, Trackhouse. Don't let anybody tell you different. Ross Chastain, stay the course. Daniel Suarez, stay the course.
I want to see Chastain's attitude when the roles are reversed. When Hamlin gets into him, Truex gets into him, Elliott bumps him.
I think that would be the true character thing, because if Ross Chastain goes, I can't believe he just hit me. I'm like, okay, your true character.
If you dish it out, you better be able to take it.
Right, your true color. If his true colors show like that, I would say I'd probably come back to this episode and say I was wrong. I should, I guess it was a poorly timed comment that I made on that episode. But if he doesn't come back and he says, well, I raced him hard like that, I expect to be raced hard like that, it's like, okay, we'll just have to wait and see on that. And I think we're going to see that when the playoffs start here at the Southern 500 here in September.
Hey, race fans, like what you just saw, be sure to hit that like button at the bottom and hit that notification bell as well for any upcoming live episodes. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to Ramblin' About Racing's YouTube channel. There you can go back and watch previous episodes, even back when we used to be called In the Marbles. Check us out.